Vietnam's Communist Party Congress reappoints To Lam as General Secretary for the next 5 years, laying the ground for his pro-growth plans. For further analysis, Dr. Hong Hiep is a Senior Fellow and Coordinator at Vietnam Studies Program at ISEAS-Yusof Ishak Institute, and he joins us right here in the studio. Dr. Lê, a lot of focus on General Secretary To Lam. Before we get to his pro-growth plans, other names that we should be paying attention to that could be taking some of these leadership, 5-pillar leadership positions in Vietnam.
So apart from Mr. To Lam, there are two men whom we should pay attention to. First is General Phan Van Giang, who is currently the Minister of Defense, and then Mr. Lê Minh Hưng, who is currently the head of the CPV Central Commission of Organization, and he was previously a governor of the State Bank of Vietnam. Why we should pay attention to these two men? First, Mr. Phan Van Giang is currently the Minister of Defense, but there's a chance for him to be promoted to president. If there's someone in the Politburo who will be succeeding him as the Minister of Defense. But I think this likelihood is not very high because there are rumors that Mr. To Lam will also be elected as the President of Vietnam in the next session of the National Assembly. Mr. Lê Minh Hưng will likely succeed Mr. Phạm Minh Chính as the new Prime Minister of Vietnam. He is the man who runs the government and who is the one who runs the economy. So whether he will be elected as the Prime Minister and how he will perform in the new position will matter a lot to the Vietnamese economy and the foreign investors in particular.
All right. In fact, our correspondent earlier was saying this is music to investors' ears that Mr. To Lam has been re-elected. And of course, this Prime Minister, who is his ally, if he is also Prime Minister, Lê Minh Hưng, that will also be music to investors' ears.
Correct.
Let's go back, and I will need you to clarify this. Why we look at the Defense Minister is the idea that if he were to be promoted to President, that's one of the 5 main positions of leadership in Vietnam. We need to see now, today, where we will see who made the 19-member Politburo, someone who could take his place as Defense Minister. And by your reckoning, we have not seen any key military person promoted to the Politburo who might take Mr. Phan's place, which would leave him free to take up the President's position.
Well, the position of Minister of Defense must be taken or must be held by a Politburo member. And currently, in the Politburo member, apart from Mr. Giang, there are 2 other military generals. First is Mr. Nguyễn Trọng Nghĩa, who is now the political commissar of the Vietnam People's Army. And second is Mr. Trịnh Văn Quyết, who is the head of the CPV Central Commission for Propaganda and Mass Mobilization. But I don't think either Mr. Nghĩa or Mr. Quyết will be promoted as Minister of Defense. So it's very likely that Mr. Giang will stay on as Minister of Defense, and that means he will not be promoted to President. And that leaves the opportunity for Mr. To Lam to be elected as President of Vietnam.
Of course, our correspondent earlier stressing this is just what many are predicting. It will only be confirmed later this year in April.
In April, or perhaps because by rules, the new government and the new cabinet and the head of state will be elected by the new National Assembly, and they will hold a new National Assembly election in March, and the new National Assembly will convene its first session perhaps in early April, and then they will elect the new president and the new prime minister as well as his cabinet. But there have been precedents that the current National Assembly may hold an extraordinary session to appoint or to elect the new government and the new president. It has happened before because they don't want to wait too long for the new government to be elected. Because Mr. To Lam, he wants to be fast in everything. He wants the new leadership team to take over as early as possible. So there's an opportunity or a possibility that things may happen earlier than we expected.
In fact, Mr. To Lam, 17 years in his position, carrying out sweeping changes in administration as well as in the economy. So why does it matter if of these 5 key leadership positions in Vietnam, 2 should be taken hypothetically by the same man?
Well, that will be in line with his reform agenda, which has been focused on streamlining the bureaucracy, and combining the 2 offices will, help to make the governance structure leaner and hopefully more efficient. And under his pro-growth, agenda, he wants the government and the party system to be leaner and more efficient, so that they can perform well and deliver on his agenda of economic reform. And this year, he pushed the government to deliver at least 10% GDP growth, which is very ambitious. And without a lean and efficient government and party system, it's very difficult for him to deliver on his promise.
In fact, 10% is more than Vietnam has ever achieved, including in its reform years. So the highest was 9.5%. This was in 1995. Is there confidence that more than 10% can actually be reached?
Well, that is a very ambitious goal, and I would admit that it's very difficult for Vietnam to achieve that ambitious goal. Perhaps his intention is to push Vietnam as hard as possible, so that even if Vietnam cannot reach 10%, then perhaps it can reach 8 or 9%, which is already better than the normal rate of 6 or 7% that Vietnam achieved in the previous years. He has the intention of turning Vietnam into a high-income developed economy by 2045. And Vietnam has only 15 or 20 years more to go before it gets old. So there's a sense of urgency in his actions and his directions. So, although it's difficult, I think they are very determined to go in that direction and to achieve as high as possible growth target.
All right, a side point, Mr. To Lam also stressing foreign policy today. You could argue that under him, as in fact de facto face of Vietnam, we see him everywhere meeting foreign leaders, and he's the man they go to if they want to to reach any decisions that really do matter. Any change you see in foreign policy?
Well, I don't expect any changes in Vietnam's foreign policy and the role of Mr. To Lam in foreign affairs. As you mentioned, he has been already very active in performing, foreign policy duties, even when he was still the General Secretary only. So if he is elected as president as well, he will play an even more active role, because he will be, conducting foreign affairs not only in the capacity of party chief, but also as the head of the state. He will have more authority to make decisions on foreign affairs issues, and he also be able to interact with more foreign leaders to promote Vietnam's position in international arena.
Oh, thanks so much for joining us to talk that through. Dr. Hong Hiep, he's Senior Fellow and Coordinator, Vietnam Studies Program at ISEAS-Yusof Ishak Institute. Thanks for joining us this evening.